All right, thanks for joining the call. There's only a few items to discuss, mainly some review and to make sure we're aligned on the validation roadmap. But first off, there's the Q3 OKRs, which have now been defined and finalized. So that is good. I just wanted to align everybody on like, hey, have we seen this? Is everybody on board with this? There was the issue. There's the MR that it made it visible inside of the handbook, and then you can see the last URL, which kind of displays it. And I'll briefly share my screen. Should be this one. So here we have the OKRs. There's three main things, basically. There's one which is, do we deliver on our success? So this is like, hey, we have our quarterly issues or quarterly planning epic issues. How much of that are we actually delivering on? It's a pretty simple OKR, which was there kind of like before, but in a less formal way. This was an idea by Orit, so I thought it was a great idea to put in there and just track ourselves a little bit more formally, basically. Then there's this have positive say-do ratio, which is kind of like related to that. It's an engineering KPI that's being measured at the end of Q3, and then we can say, all right, did we arrive at the destination of 70%? Yes or no, which was an idea given by Nicole, who is the front-end engineering manager. So that kind of makes up the first OKR. Not much else to do there, except for like following as best as we can on, our product development roadmap. Then on to the next one, which is more UX product related. We're going to do the maturity scorecard. At least we're going to try our best doing that. And the first step in that is create the job to be done overview of the continuous delivery product category. And have this detail in the handbook. So there's one little section that needs to be filled out for that. And we need to be relatively confident on what we're going to put in there. So that's the first part. And there's a complete maturity scorecard for continuous delivery. So we're going to only focus on a small subsection, or at least the biggest subsection of progressive delivery. And I was just wondering, mostly towards Lori, do you have any additional thoughts to this? Do you think this is feasible? Your general thoughts would be great to have.
So thoughts on the one you've got highlighted there?
Sorry, this one.
Oh, that one. Okay, sorry. Okay. Yes. So I can tell you that the category maturity scorecard the process is being reimagined. I don't know if that's the right word. There are some updates to be made that I've got to dive into this week. And Adam has assured me they are small yet powerful updates to the handbook page. But I think there are some philosophical discussions still happening around the whole CMS process. So keeping that in mind, I think that it would be a good idea, if we don't already have our jobs to be done, to start identifying and knowing what our level of confidence is with them. So I say that because there are two main ways you can get your jobs to be done. You can go off and actually conduct what they call job interviews with people. What do you do? Why do you do it that way? What tools do you use? Very, very similar to persona interviews. But they're a little bit more specific to our area of progressive delivery. The other way that you can do it is you can go back and look at customer interviews, prior research, and see what people have talked about in terms of progressive delivery and the tasks that they do. So like Kayana and Jackie did that. They went back through their research because they had done research like every 3 weeks on something. They had enough information in that knowledge base to pull jobs to be done out and pull them out with confidence. So they didn't have to conduct job interviews. I've talked to some other designers and product managers who are a little less confident in those jobs to be done that they kind of brainstormed, that I suggested to them to go in and run a few job interviews to see if they could validate some of those job interviews or jobs to be done. So you can do a mix of those two things. But I think that's a good place to start, because it's never a bad thing to have jobs to be done, a list of those. But I might hold off on pushing for the CMS scorecard, the category maturity scorecard so far. just wait, I think, a little bit on that one until we figure out where it's going to land, because I'll be honest, it may very well just go away, but we'll always need those jobs to be done. So that's why my advice would be to start with the jobs to be done and go from there, because that will take a while. It's not something that you can do in an hour. It's an involved process, because we do want to have as much confidence as we can have with them before we use them for things. That's the goal.
So I have a question.
Yeah.
This specific jobs to be done effort that we're trying to do has to do with the fact that we're trying to figure out what's the next step for a CD, okay?
Mm-hmm.
What's our current maturity and how do we get to the next maturity? Because I don't trust what we wrote right now.
That is a very healthy attitude, Ori. Let me tell you. That is good. Yeah, you can go through that process of the scorecard as we have it now, but we have to have the jobs to be done before we get to that stage. So that's why my suggestion is let's round them up. Let's see what the jobs to be done are. They don't have to be things that we have solved for today. They're just a reflection of what our end users are doing in their jobs. So rounding those up and then comparing those to what we have today will help us to understand, if you guys want to move forward with the CMS process, which jobs to be done should we focus on? Because that is one of the big questions that everybody's having is, well, I got this category. It's never really gone through a summative evaluation before, and I have 10 jobs to be done. Do I test all of them? No, you don't have enough time to do that. So the conversation then once you identify the jobs to be done, the conversation then turns into which one or two, trust me, one or two tops, jobs to be done would help us if we understood how well we have done or how bad we have done in supporting these jobs, would tell us how mature we are in this category on this time frame, this date, this week. Those jobs to be done that are measured over time will change as we add more features in, we support more things, we get deeper into these tasks. We can change them out, but it's like that snapshot at the time. This one job, these two jobs, these are the most important things. Let's go find out how good we did, because that's what we think they're the most important ones based on what we know from our customers. They have to complete these jobs. How did we do with those? Because each job often results in several tasks for the user to accomplish in order to do that job. So that's why I say 1 to 2. Don't hurt yourself and do like 4 or 5. It's going to be so bad. It'll be like an hour and a half long and you'll be so tired.
Okay.
Yeah, I would add to that the jobs to be done framework we have in the handbook supports that we can state per job to be done and per subtask even to state, all right, this has a, we can give it a grade. So we can easily see like, all right, you know, this job's to be done. We have focused on that. And these are the several subtasks. And for some of these tasks, we're supporting less well than other tasks within that jobs to be done.
Yeah.
So even though if we cannot focus on the maturity scorecard so much, I think we can still say and kind of like display the result of our efforts in that job to be done framework in the handbook and say, all right, there's clearly some indication that we need to focus here rather than there because of our grading of each several subtasks.
Yeah, I think even Lori, if you're saying that the CMS may not be staying with us forever, but I think jobs to be done are, it's anyway the best beginning to for that, like Orit, what you're saying, that we are not sure if what we have there for CD today is the right thing to have. I think jobs to be done is the way to validate that. So I think anyway, that's a great thing to do here next. Will CMS be in place or not? But that's just a great validation.
So what I meant was that we currently in CD, for example, I think we're at complete, whereas we hardly support the net cloud deployments. So how could we be complete? That's what I mean. Like, it doesn't make sense to me.
I know, and that's the hard part. So if you as the PM feel that supporting cloud deployments is a crucial element for the category to move, like we have to do that in order to move up, then I would say we probably don't even have to test it because we know we don't. So like, let's focus on building that out, and then we go through the category maturity scorecard once we've built that out and tested. And that's where the art of it comes in a little bit, and people are like, but I just want you to tell me which ones I need to test. It really, I tend to rely much more on my PMs to tell me, because you guys know so much more about the space than I do. You know, like you just said, my gut tells me, like, we need to have this feature. We don't have this feature. How can we be mature? We don't have this feature. You're probably right. You would know.
Yeah, it just seems to me like everyone is deploying to the cloud. And if everyone is not deploying to the cloud, they're on the journey to deploying to the cloud.
Yeah.
Like, I read so much articles about like that being the trend. It seems to me that if we don't do that, well, or either lose business or I don't know. But saying that we're complete, it doesn't feel well. Like, it doesn't sit well with me. But that's just like one aspect. CD is huge. That's the biggest problem.
I know, you're not alone. This is the same conversation I had with like Holly and some of the other designers as well, and with their PMs. It's everybody's. It's such a huge. Each of the categories are so huge that it's hard to say, okay, I'm going to summatively evaluate this whole entire thing and then tell you where we are. We've never summatively evaluated anything. We've only formatively evaluated. So we evaluate as we go. We never just take a step back and go, okay, where have we gone? If you compare what we have now to where we started, sure, we're more mature than where we started, right? It's all relative. So that's why I would say I don't want you to do yourself a disservice to say that the category is less mature than it is now, just because we are not doing something that we may not have even known about a year ago. And that's the hard part about this, because it is that the landscape keeps changing. So the conversation has also been around this process is, how often do we do this process? And that's why I say it may be going away, because it may be unsustainable for us to continue to pull this process in as much as we have to, because the landscape keeps changing so dynamically. But for you, like, CD offers usable things for people to use. Like, it's not like the Gantt chart with the project management stuff, which is very, very low in its ability to be used because it offers so very little. Yeah, right? So I don't know, that's my non-PM professional opinion, because it is something that everybody's struggling with. So don't feel like just because you're not doing the one thing, you have to go down in category maturity. And we couldn't even test it because there's nothing to test, right? That we couldn't even say that we don't do it because we don't have anything designed for it. And that's the other flaw in the CMS system, is it only tests what we have.
Yeah. So why don't we go according to what analysts say? Like, why are we making this such a hard process?
That's a good question. I don't know. All I can tell you is that the background for this process came about many, many moons ago, when I think Sid or somebody at the company said, we need to be less objective or subjective on this category maturity score. We need to get numbers in behind that. So thus the CMS process was born. But yeah, I don't know. And that may be very well where it goes, Orit. Like we abandoned this summative, very heavy summative process, and we go towards more of a industry standard. Like, let's look at our competitors and see what they're doing, see what they're supporting. Do we do that or not? That's pretty cut and dry.
No, but like we just got out of CDRA wave. Last year we were like contenders, and this year we're strong performers. Yay, we're doing good, right? Why is like that's an easy process. I mean, we worked hard on talking to the analysts, but we got an objective mark, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, but it's a bird's eye perspective, right? It is not something where we zoomed in.
Why not? We did a demo, we showed them what we can do, they compared us to competitors. Yes, it's not all the competitors in the world, it's just the people that are part of the wave, but...
Yeah, they compared us to competitors, at least how I see it, and please correct me if I'm wrong on this, but we want to be leaders here, and we want to go to places where others have not gone before. So we're going to be less comparable to others, and the only way where we can, in that way, validate ourselves is with actual users and seeing if what we're providing is actually delivering them value.
I don't know if I agree with that. In some things we're leaders and in some things we're followers. Take, for example, feature flags. We're pretty late in the game. First, we need to reach basic feature parity before we make this awesome, cool new feature that's going to be a differentiator. So it really depends.
I guess it's all in our hands anyway. I think, to my understanding, I think the analysts and the users can bring in two different pieces of information to the table because they live in two different, well, not two different worlds, but exactly like analysts are looking at the product from one perspective, and then users are like selfishly looking at what they need. Yeah, and to Dimitri's point, if we want to be a bit of a leaders or maybe come up with some fresh ideas, maybe we could look into that and try to brainstorm. But yeah, talking to analysts is always helpful as well. I would see those things as more like how to say adding on top of each other than replacing each other, from my perspective. Orit, how do we best help you here? Like,
well, I think we need to figure out the jobs to be done, like Lori said. That's the first place to start with.
Yeah, I think it can open a lot of our eyes and a lot of information, to be honest.
I think we should actually go with those job interviews that were suggested, because I don't think, at least the interviews, the research that I have done in the past few months together with A/B testing is like a whole different persona. So I think we can't rely on that. And then, you know, I did deploy to AWS, I did the post-deployment monitoring. It seems very niche and not like the general use case.
Yeah, that makes sense. I have a job interview discussion guide template
That would be helpful.
that I'm going to put here. Done. Your copy link. Good Lord. All right. That I think will help. And so with these interviews, think of them as very similar to personas. So you're going to want to talk to more than 5 people. You're going to want to talk to, we're looking at 8 to 10 per segment. So if there are differences between, I don't know, somebody new to CD versus somebody who's doing it for 20 years, versus some tools that they're using, or enterprise versus a jack of all trades, one person who's doing it all. You know, think about what the differences might be. That might be a good first step, is think about all the differences that you've come across as you know this space, and think about how many categories that makes, like how many groups of people does that make? And then from there, depending on how many groups of people you have, how many segments, then you're looking for like 8 to 10 per segment, because you're really wanting to dive deep into what is it that they do, what is it that they wish they did, for especially around progressive delivery. What are the tools that they're using? Who are the people that they're working with? Like, it's all of those questions. It's all in that template too, so you can look in there and get a sense of those questions that you would want to ask somebody in these interviews. But it's really diving deep into their jobs and their daily lives. It's just like somebody sitting down with you and interviewing you about what you do.
Okay.
All right, sounds good. Sounds doable. In terms of like the validation roadmap, like it's from product design perspective, finishing up A/B testing, then it's, you know, focusing on jobs to be done. In terms of those interviews, we could both do that in a way, or do you have something else in mind where you want to focus on?
Yeah, we can tag each other. It's a lot of interviews. We can just split it up.
I would be really happy to help as well, presenting, taking notes, or leading some. I know that Mike Long was helping the dev team. So if you feel like that's too much, because that feels like a lot of interviews, I'm happy to jump in as well.
And I can help too, whatever, if you've got some people who are in US time zone and it works out, I'm happy to lead some interviews as well, because it can be a lot of people.
We have an army.
Yes.
All right, sounds good. That is something to dive into in that case. The last OKR to finish up my original story is focused on the product/UX OKRs, so just derived from there and specific to progressive delivery. Groom the backlogs, seeing which issues apply to progressive delivery, and those are to be weighted by engineering, some to be done by whomever encounters them, such as myself. But we'll see from there. So nothing really exciting there that we didn't know already about. If anyone has a comment about that, please speak up. Otherwise, we'll go on to the last point in the agenda, which is just an idea.
So I had one question about the OKR. There's an OKR about pajama design, and I talked to Kenny about that, and he told me that we're not obligated to schedule any of those items. Like it's a grab bag, basically. Anyone who wants to fix them is welcome to, but they don't necessarily be scheduled.
Yes, that is absolutely correct. There's no dedicated commitment needed. However, everyone is very much, how do you say? We assume intent to deliver. And in that way, I was thinking, as I think Hayana has done a little bit of the same thing. At least I encountered some of her labeled issues, but I think we were the first ones to actually do it in this way. So I was thinking of like, hey, some of these issues, at least I've done a few already. They take quite a long time, and I think they are super simple for a front-end engineer who is day in, day in out, in the code. And in that way, I was wondering like, hey, these are kind of like 0.5 or weight 1 issues. So I was thinking like maybe we can leverage some of the engineering team to say, all right, let's close a few of them. And that way contribute to the bigger effort of this product and UX OKR.
I told Kenny that we should offer incentives. Anyone who does that should get GitLab pajamas.
GitLab pajamas. There's socks. We have, I don't know about pajamas, but we have socks. I think that would be a great thing. I can ask Tari about those because we have a lot of those pajamas in stock. So do I know. Perhaps we should give some incentive to put behind that.
Sounds like a pretty good motivation to me.
Cool. That is a really cool idea. I think there was already something like that, but I don't know if that was tied to this OKR, yes or no.
Sorry, I have to jump. Thanks all.
No problem. Thanks. All right. I'll go into that in the last thing, and then I'll briefly ask about this, just a thing to think about. And this is, I think, especially wondering about you or it from a product point of view. Now, in a bit, we'll have all those jobs to be done. We have these user flows. People are being awesome in our product, but we are still releasing products like our milestones in like big buckets. Like, here's a bucket of stuff we've developed this milestone. Here you have it all. And that is awesome, but it doesn't really provide too much context in in what way it's going to be awesome for whom, right? So I was wondering, are there any ideas, both from a release or like from a product perspective, but perhaps also from a release perspective, but also from a larger jobs to be done perspective, Lori, perhaps there are some ideas floating around to see if we can go and deliver blog posts, like a release blog post, but like geared at a specific job to be done for a specific persona or something like that. Like, hey, we have developed this user flow in its completeness in the last 6 milestones. We're now ready to state to you like, hey, this is a complete thing. You can use this with satisfaction, etc.
So anyone can write a blog post about anything, basically. It's called an unfiltered post, and some of them are, and there's another blog post which is like promoted by the company. So you have one of 2 ways of doing them, and I have done both in the last few months. So for example, I just released a post about safely deploying with GitLab. So I combined a bunch of issues, which included both progressive delivery and release management, and made a list of things that you can use together in order to have safe deployments. And it got really great feedback. That was a blog that was not in the unfiltered one. It was one that was promoted. But I've also done like really small blog posts, for example, for the community contribution that we had for the notification for when a pipeline succeeds after it fails. And I just wrote a dedicated blog post just about that with a bunch of like manual and training material and what you'll expect and things like that. So we can always do that. And if we come up with something good enough, then we can also promote it. So there's nothing holding back anyone to doing that. I don't think there's a process to do it specifically for jobs to be done, but I don't see a reason why not.
Yeah, that sounds good. I'm glad to hear that. What do you think about like the larger, like, of course we can go about this in our own way and kind of like push forward, but do you think, like, when I look at the release blog posts, I see the same design, the same structure that I implemented 3 years ago. Like nothing has changed.
So,
I'm wondering if it still applies the same way as it does 3 years ago. I don't think so in that case.
So the release blog post is like the most annoying process that I have to live with in GitLab. It's like my pain. But I've tried to change it like almost every month, and Sid is in love with it. So I don't see it changing anytime soon. The thing was that there used to be like this huge release notes that wasn't structured in any way. And then they said, here's the release blog post. And there was like a huge list. It's still a huge list, but now they said, okay, let's take the top 3 and just like highlight them. And then they divided it into primary and secondary items because there's a bunch of like really cool stuff and there's like smaller cool stuff. So it's a huge process. I don't even understand why we're doing the blog post once a month. We deliver twice a week to production. Why don't we do mini release blog posts? I don't know, but that's the decision. And you know, it's called disagree and commit.
Once per 2 weeks? I thought we delivered like more often, like each week or something.
Yeah, I think we deliver twice a week. It may be even more.
Twice a week.
Twice a week, yeah.
That's a lot. Twice a week. All right, cool. All right, just an idea. I was wondering what you had to say. So that's good. Then perhaps we can put our efforts of our jobs to be done also in something like that. Can expose a little bit more and get a little bit more value out of it than we already will have at that point. So that's good. If there are no more comments, then I'm going to end this session and I'll see you later.
There's just one thing, Lori.
Yeah.
I completed the draft of the screener.
Yes.
So just keep an eye out on that.
Yes, no, I was going to get to it 3 times yesterday and I got pulled into other things. So it's on my list today.
Just wanted to make sure that you got the note.
Yes, ma'am.
All right. Thank you all.
Bye, guys.
Bye-bye.